ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Top 5 Academy. Today, we will be discussing and talking about the most useful late-game dinos in Ark Survival Evolved. Now, as you remember, we did the top 5 most useful early-game dinos in Ark Survival Evolved, and that got a load of support, so I decided, hey, why don't we do late-game dinos too? And this will actually have 2 parts, because there are 10 that I chose, because they were all just so good and helpful that I couldn't only pick 5. And so, the next video will be coming out the following week after this. And I do all these videos in advance, so if for some reason some of these dinos get nerfed and changed and they're not as good, don't hate me for it. But yeah, I also want to thank all of the people that I'm using gameplay of in this video. And yeah, guys, enjoy the rest of this video. Okay, so starting off this list is the dung beetle. This thing is so great. It's very simple on what it does, but it passively produces fertilizer as long as it is fed poop constantly. And at first glance, this seems really stupid. Like, why would you need an infinite supply of citrinols and rock carrots? But what this is really useful for is plant species explants. Because if you're an alpha tribe on an official server, or any tribe on an official server with big bases, you know what I'm talking about. It's a struggle getting fertilizer without dung beetles. You need tons of them because compost bins are just so slow. It's really stupid to not have dung beetles. They're really great, but simple and weak at the same time. So that's why they're at the number 10 spot, or rather the number 5 spot for part 1. Okay, so coming in at the number 4 spot is another seemingly useless dino, but once you figure out the actual uses for this thing, it's amazing. This is the Achatina, or the snail, because that's way easier to say. So this thing, it's overpowered, honestly, if you think about it, especially starting out in Ark. I mean, sure, they eat really expensive, like you need to feed them veggie cakes, which can be a pain to get, but actually, I don't remember the rates, but they passively produce both cementing paste and organic polymer, which when you tame them, you get a starting amount of about 100 organic polymer and a certain amount of cementing paste. So, and these are like the main resources used for building and for getting a lot of gear and stuff, like especially with ghillie, because you can use organic polymer organic polymer is required for the ghillie recipe, but you can also use it for any recipe that requires polymer. And having a bunch of these guys, again, they're a really big pain to feed, but having a bunch of these guys, you will have so many resources, you'll never run out of cementing paste. There will actually come a time where you have way too much cementing paste, but do not get rid of these. Just upload them or something so they don't starve until you need them again. But yeah, this Achatina is great, but again, it's not super powerful, so that's why it's in the number 9/number 4 spot. Okay, so for this next one, a lot of you are gonna hate me for either putting this dino on the list at all, or for just putting it too low. And, well, this is the Tusoteuthis. This thing is, I love it. Personally, I think it's good fun to use, but it's also quite useful. You can pretty much tame and knock out a lot of things a lot easier underwater now. You can pick up a mosasaur, and it may take a few pickups, but you can pick up a mosasaur and knock it out while it's underwater. Maybe a little bit risky if the Moses damage is too high, but overall, this thing, it's not crazy. That's why it's so low, but it's obviously incredibly strong, but it sometimes doesn't see the most use, and that's understandable considering aquatic mounts aren't as readily accessible as land mounts, considering that aquatic mounts can't be used in any boss fights or pretty much any caves except for the fully submerged underwater caves that don't have any land on them really, which I don't think there are any, but like there's whole sections of caves that are water. But I mean, it's useful overall. It's very good, but it doesn't exactly need a spot too high on this list, as there are some flaws with it. Okay, hear me out on this next one, because I can already feel the hate being dropped in the comments section. This is the Ovis, and yes, guys, I am not blind or deaf or stupid. I realize this is probably the weakest creature in the game, save the dodo, but this thing, yes, it's very, very weak. It's horrible, it's awful. It is not in the least bit useful alive, but that's the key. I mean, okay, it's not completely useless alive. You can get wool, big whoop. I mean, it's good for fur if you live in the tundra, but the real key about this thing is when it's dead, because once you kill this and harvest it, you get raw mutton, which is probably the most broken thing in this game, due to the fact that it tames better than prime meat on most dinosaurs, which is just insanity. And you can cook this into lamb chops, which stacks into stacks of 20, which is still better than prime meat on most dinos. Like, it's crazy. And remember, guys, this is the bottom 5 for the top 10 list, so I do not think that this is the number 2 most useful late game dino in Ark Survival Evolved. I couldn't care less if they all died, just as long as we could harvest them. But yeah, let's get on to the number 1/number 6 spot. And in the number 1 spot of part 1 of the top 10 most useful late game dinos in Ark Survival Evolved, we have the Basilosaurus. Now, some of you might be thinking, it's a freaking whale thing. How is this late game? Well, it's kind of a pain to tame because, one, the Therizinosaurus kibble makes me want to die. Also, it is constantly surrounded by whatever predator you could possibly think of. Read the dossier, that'll make more sense. But this thing is great. It passively produces oil, moves at a decent speed, it's pretty maneuverable, and it heals like astronomically fast near the surface of the water. This thing heals to max health in like 7 seconds. Like, watch this. You see that health? That's insane. And that's at the surface of the water after being attacked by like tons of megalodons. But this thing is crazy. The only problem with it is that this is why it's lower on the list. It's quite slow. It's not the slowest thing ever, but it's definitely not that fast. Also, it starts to die pretty fast when it gets too deep because the water pressure actually kills it, which it's a big shame because otherwise this would be a very good dino. I mean, it is a very good dino, but that's why it is on the the number 6 spot of the total 10, but the number 1 of this video. I do not think this is the most useful dino in all of Ark Survival Evolved for late game stuff. So just wanted to clear that up. I'm not silly. Just keep in tune for the next video, which will end the list actually. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you all in the next one.